Try that again. Just warming up, checking my vocal levels. Okay, welcome to this meeting of the decision session for the Executive Member for Finance and Performance, held in consultation with the Executive Member for Housing and Safer Neighbourhoods on Monday, the 12th of July. Item 1 on the agenda is declarations of interest. I have no interest to declare. Councillor Crackhill?
No, I don't.
Item 2 is to approve the minutes. I'm happy to approve those as a correct record. Item 3, public participation. We have nobody registered to speak today, so that takes us to item 4, the main item on the agenda, which is the annual report on financial inclusion and welfare benefits. And I'll hand over to Pauline Sturchford.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides portfolio holder executive members with the Financial Inclusion and Welfare Benefits 2021 outturn report, including the ongoing impact of coronavirus, as well as recent welfare benefit changes in York, including, importantly, the support available for residents in dealing with those challenges. It also includes an update on benefits statistics and performance, and it also includes other financial inclusion activity during 2021, including the delivery of financial inclusion grant schemes. In terms of the welfare benefits update then, to assist with the financial impact on York residents arising from the pandemic in April 2020, emergency decisions were taken by the executive to allocate an additional £1 million worth of support, which is administered and managed through the York Financial Assistance Scheme, within which the criteria was widened to include all residents finding themselves in financial hardship during the pandemic. Examples of spend against the fund for the financial year 2020-21 are shown in the first table 1. And examples where the fund has been used, you can see that it's been used to pay for the free school meal vouchers of £15 per child during the October 2020 half-term holiday at a cost of just over £50,000. The subsequent holiday costs through to May 2021 half-term have been met from the government's winter support grant funding. But as you can see from the table, we've also had to supplement from the fund that winter support grant funding to an extent of £236,000. You can also see that almost £79,000 has also been used to supplement the £957,000 council tax support hardship grant funded by the government, as outlined further in the report. And you can see that actually quite a bit of resource went to supporting the community hubs, particularly with residents who were shielding, in providing food parcels and also mobile phones and internet, which I'll talk about later. Regarding the winter support grant then, on 8th of November 2020, the government announced a package of extra targeted financial support for those in need over the winter period. The initial funding allocation for York was £417,000. Criteria for the use of the funding meant 80% had to be used on food and utilities and 80% on families with children. 2,100 applications were paid out supporting families with food bills. Families could apply for that on a monthly basis. So some families did benefit from that payment more than once through the winter. The government provided further winter support funding for the period 31st of March through to 16th of April, and then introduced what's called a local COVID support grant through to the 21st of June 2021. The council received a further 98,000 of funding for this scheme, and 50,000 was top sliced for free school meal vouchers during the May half term 2021. A further £100,000 of public health funding was used to augment the government's local COVID support grant, providing a total budget of 148,000 through to June 2021. And I'll talk about the extension of that shortly. Table 4 shows some further grants that we've been paying out to support individuals and families during test and traced isolation periods. And we've paid out 126 payments worth of £340,000 for that. And more recently, we are starting to see quite a significant increase of that in that funding. And it is something that is topped up by the government and by public health. In terms of council tax support, COVID has had a significant impact on The number of claims that we're getting from residents who require assistance in paying their council tax, increasing by almost 1,000 by the summer 2020, and whilst slightly reduced by 119 by March, the numbers have remained high throughout, and we still have a high number of council tax support claimants at this time as well. The government provided a hardship fund as part of its COVID support to provide existing and new claimants of council tax support with up to £150 towards their bill during 2021. This government funding of £957,000 was exhausted at the end of October 2020, and the council agreed to fund the scheme for the rest of the financial year to 31st of March 2021. And as you can see from the financial assistance table 1, we funded that to £79,000. We've received more money this financial year, and we've been able to pass £75 per council tax support claimant to assist with bills this year. In terms of universal credit, the impact on the pandemic on jobs and those in work, but on universal credit is clear as shown in table 7. With the numbers increasing by 57% from March to April 2020 alone, and numbers almost doubling by the end of September 2020. And further details of the breakdown of claimants is shown in Annex A. These levels are at a point in time and don't reflect the economic position now, but I would say that the level still remains high, and we have furlough ending in September. So just to raise those points that we're not at the end of this. The work of the welfare benefits team is also described in the report. The income services team, through its benefits and contributions advisors, whilst they've not been able to meet people in person as they traditionally do, they've supported people over the phone, over the web. They've supported 1,560 residents, providing advice and support, which has generated extra welfare benefits for those residents of over £3 million during the financial year, which is quite incredible considering the challenges in service delivery that those staff have had. The report then goes into some detail. It's new to us really around impacts of digital inclusion, which has been seen throughout the pandemic, which has continued to highlight the importance of digital inclusion and the equality faced by those without digital access. Working with the Digital City team in ICT, the council agreed a package of support for mobile phones and personal Wi-Fi spots funded through the extra emergency funding, with 3 months call and data, as well as the units themselves. We've given out 55 mobile phones with 3 months inclusive data and 25 hotspots. We have extended those data periods as the pandemic has extended. During the evaluation of the scheme, people receiving assistance with a smartphone and all have told us, and the report describes how it has improved their lives during the pandemic. The report also talks about the recently launched York IT Reuse Scheme, which was developed as a result of the joint work of organisations and services in the city, working across a wide spectrum of areas, all identifying a lack of digital access as a barrier to people with complex needs during the pandemic. The scheme has provided, by the end of the year, 54 reused computer devices to residents to get them online. The scheme is funded by the Multiple Complex Needs Networks Build Back Better Fund, run by the Two Ridings Community Foundation. And the scheme is operated through the York Community Furniture Store, which is using funding of £29,000 for a part-time development and coordinator post for 12 months. The work of Explore York Library and Archive Service in leading digital inclusion in partnership with the council, following a previous executive decision to fund a workshop led by Citizens Online, will be key in taking this work forward, and they've already done some really good work. The housing update in the report outlines the council tenants' rent arrears position and the work done to support tenants in debt and to advise other landlords in the city in supporting their tenants. The next section of the report covers other activities funded by the council that have supported financial inclusion activities during 2021, as well as activity in place for the current year. The partnership-based financial inclusion steering group is responsible for overseeing the delivery of this work. The group regularly monitors the grants awarded to local organisations to deliver projects to meet the group's objectives. It has an agreed base budget of 100,000 per financial year for approved grant schemes. As you can see from the report, 6 projects were funded for the year 2020-21. Despite the challenges and constraints of COVID, all providers were able to continue to deliver high levels of support to residents by developing alternative methods of working. All partners responded swiftly and positively to the challenges of COVID-19, working collaboratively and innovatively to continue to support vulnerable residents in the city. Table 9 gives a high-level summary of what the projects hope to achieve, along with some of the key outcomes. Around 960 residents were directly supported by these projects. Specific outcomes include 244 residents who saw £500,000 increased income. Over 2,600 unique benefit issues were handled, with a noticeable increase from those who found themselves reliant on welfare benefits as a result of the economic impacts of COVID-19, particularly those having to claim universal credit for the first time. In addition, as a direct result of some of the project interventions, 3 people found employment and 29 took up training or employment opportunities. In terms of funding projects for the current financial year, grants totaling 113,276 to fund 7 projects were approved for 21-22, and these are shown in Table 10. The report also talks about the work of the community hubs, which describes a clear transition from an emergency response to a longer-term community approach. Whilst residents who have COVID-19 or are self-isolating will continue to need emergency support, the council want to highlight to residents that they are looking at longer-term solutions, both for those directly affected by the virus and for those affected by the long-term impacts individually and within the community. I just want to briefly mention the breathing space scheme, which has now commenced from the 1st of May, which aims to relieve some of the pressure of dealing with creditors so that people can focus on getting debt advice and setting up their debt solution without worrying about being chased for payment or incurring extra charges. It's a free scheme launched by the government, and we've got all our systems and processes in place to receive those requests from our debt advisor colleagues across the city. Finally, I want to thank all volunteers and staff and charity and voluntary sector colleagues involved in supporting our residents under their own challenging circumstances over the past 18 months, which has enabled the significant support outlined in the report to be delivered. But the challenge is not over yet, and we continue to give out grants and support, and we are working on a plan for this winter as we speak.
Thank you, Colin. I'll have 2 questions or comments. Councillor Crackhill.
Thank you. Yes, I don't think I have any further questions. That's very comprehensive. I'd just like to make a few comments. First of all, I'd just like to welcome the wide-ranging financial support that we have been able to provide to York residents through the pandemic, which I think this paper shows. And I'd like to echo what you said at the end in terms of, I think we should celebrate the extremely good partnership working that we have in place in York on financial inclusion issues, and the huge amount of really good work that's been done both by council officers and by our partners in the voluntary and community sectors. I think it's worth noting, I mean, it's difficult to pick out specific things, but that the council's welfare benefit officers have generated welfare benefit gains of over £3 million for residents. That's really positive. And Citizens Advice York's trained volunteers have supported hundreds of residents through their Help to Claim service. And that those other organisations that you pointed out that we funded through the council's £100,000 financial inclusion grant fund have been able to adapt their services through COVID, and that they've also supported many hundreds of our most vulnerable residents to access additional income and to better manage their finances, and I think also to build their confidence. And also worth noting, I have to, from my portfolio, other part of my portfolio area, note that the council's housing officers have worked with council tenants through a really difficult time, helping them to access financial advice and support. manage debts and are dealing sensitively with rent arrears where these are increasing somewhat. I'm also really pleased we've been able to fund free school meal provision through the school holidays, despite the somewhat reluctant and piecemeal support from the government. I'm pleased that we are supporting people to access the internet, as this has become increasingly crucial for financial inclusion, and we are doing a very big piece of work on that, in partnership, led by York Explore. I think the case studies show the value of that sort of work. And that we've been able to extend the extra council tax support grant provision. I don't think any of us are complacent about this. I just wanted to make a few comments on that to finish. There are always people that are not reached, and there's always more that needs to be done. And there are ongoing concerns, as you mentioned, about what's going to happen in September when we come to the end of furlough and other support schemes come to an end. I know the work that the council and more established voluntary sector organisations have done, which you set out in this report, continues to be complemented by amazing work by grassroots groups of volunteers across the city with the local food initiatives. I think it's important just to mention those as well. And whilst the council spent around £160,000, if you add it all up, on the community hubs and on help through the community hubs, I think these grassroots groups have also been reaching people who often for various reasons may not approach the council or are hard to reach through more official channels. So I'm really pleased that you mentioned in the report that the York Food Poverty Alliance has joined the citywide financial inclusion steering group, and I hope going forwards that this will be part of a continuing process of working with these grassroots groups to develop all these levels of support for people. Although I have to say an even better solution would be more consistent and better government funding and a more empowering welfare system, but we can't sort all that out today.
Thank you, Councillor Craghill. I'll be brief. I think yourselves have been very comprehensive in terms of this. And it's one of the things I thought is it's quite a small paper, but there's absolutely so much going on within that. Some of them we get long 200-page agendas that don't seem to have so much information. So much good work going on in such a small piece of paper, and it's something that people don't see a lot. I think obviously when people don't get the green bins collected, it's something that people flag about, and I think that's what the council tax is all about. But this is really some of the nuts and bolts and really important work that happens, and people don't always see it up until the point when they actually need that help, and when they need that help, it's really important. So I think having that opportunity to shine a light on that and some of the really, really fundamentally important work that the officers and partners have been doing. On the free school meals, I'll have to make a comment. I think perhaps if the government had stepped in earlier and done something around that, then perhaps Marcus Rashford would have had more time to practice penalties, and we might have had a different thing last night. So I think perhaps reflecting on that one, I think want to extend my thanks to the staff and partners. It's been a difficult 18 months going through, and some of the funding streams and some of the funding grants that have gone through have been difficult to interpret at a really sort of a rapid speed and pace that we've had to do that, but getting that support out to people has been really key to making sure that they can sort of function during the pandemic and things have happened. And also the digital inclusion work is probably the one that I want to pick up. It's something we've always, myself and Councillor Craghill, have been pushing a lot, and officers as well, that's really gone up the agenda significantly. And I think some of the comments within here about the importance that people have had of just having access to the internet, it was an interesting thing. I think I remember my first experiences of the internet was probably when I was at university and being told about email and not really understanding what things are. And when you think from there to now, in 20 years' time, it is one of the most fundamental services and one of the most important services that people have. And if you don't have access to that, you really are at a significant disadvantage. And I think we've done well in recent times of getting up to speed with helping people with support that in the same way that we do with food, in the same way that we do with bills, because it is fundamentally and so important to people of being able to do things. So I think with that one, I'm happy to agree the recommendations at paragraph 2. Okay, I have no urgent business, so I'm happy to declare the meeting closed. Thank you.